Well, let's get started. Welcome to 2018. Welcome to Webcast. This is our first day using this, so there are probably going to be a few hiccups, but we do hope that this will be a nicer and smoother system than the GoToWebinar system that we had used in the past. So there are still some hiccups. I need to get everyone into the lists, and I need to mute people as they come in, and there's all kinds of learning stuff for me. But that said, more or less the rules are the same. This is a demo and Q&A session. And any questions that you have, just go ahead and type them into the chat window. I will queue them up, and I will share them with Dion McCormick, our lead solutions engineer here at Alpha. And hi, my name is Dave McCormick. For those of you who don't know me, I am product manager here at Alpha Anywhere. Let me just go ahead and mute this person. Whoop, there we go. And this person. All right. And so let's get started. Dion, I take you off mute. There you go. And Dion, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter so we can see your screen.
Awesome.
And I will let you know you are now the presenter, but I'll let you know when I can see your screen, which is right now.
All right, there you go. Hey, we're flying without a net, you know, new year, new stuff, everything, you know.
Boy, that's for sure today, yeah.
Very cool, actually, new mic and everything. So anyway, hey, thank you everybody for joining us. I hope everybody had an amazing, awesome holiday season. I mean, man, it came on us like crazy, and it was there and gone before you know it. It was wild. But that said, we have been very, very, very busy at Alpha Anywhere because we have so many cool things going on next year. We've been kind of leading up to that. We're going to do some recap. Mainly today is a Q&A type day, but I wanted to go over a couple key things before we went into it. As Dave said, we are on a new system, so take a moment and go to your chat window in the webinar control system and just send a message to for questions that you want asked. You can send those right to Dave, and he'll coordinate those and let us know. And also beyond that, remember each time you can always send emails to guides at alphasoftware.com. That's GUIDES at alphasoftware.com. And we are
so this looks a little different this time. It looks like when you do chat, I don't even see, although maybe my name isn't on there because I'm me, but it looks like one of the first choices is Dion McCormick, presenter. So I don't know, you can probably do it that way too.
Don't chat to me. I'm going to ignore it.
All right, then find me. I'm Dave, and that's
so find David McCormick. I have you as host on mine, so we'll do that. And thank you everybody for your patience as we get this. We find we're very excited about this new web system because the quality of the video recordings are really good. We've been very, very pleased with that. And so what that's going to help us out is for the people who are online, have to learn a little bit new, but also we always record these each week and place those up on our website. And once we've done that, we now have them available for review and also for people who aren't able to attend to us live. So we're very excited about having everybody with us, and we have so many cool things planned for 2018. At the end of last year, I did a real quick presentation called the Year of the API, and the idea behind it is that there's a massive change in the industry in terms of where people are going, how they're developing enterprise-level systems and regular systems and other pieces here. The important thing about that is that it really has a transformational effect on how things are done. And what's great about it is that Alpha Anywhere is on top of that. Specifically, we are focused on taking advantage of that, and more importantly, producing technologies that will allow you, the developer, to take advantage of this kind of sea change on how things are done in the industry, and we're very excited about that. So we're actually looking at the first releases of that Q1 around API, but there's also a lot of other things going on too, which is, for instance, Alpha Transform. That API system is coming together very nicely. It's available for review and the ability for you to connect to it. And we see that is going to become a very dominant piece. Now, to give you kind of an idea, and I put this together really quickly, what I want to talk to is kind of the next generation architecture we see kind of starting to happen with Alpha. And the key here is that it does two things. One is that, and let me do a process check. Is it coming through okay?
Yep, it sure is.
It is. Okay, good, good. So there's two key things that this does, most importantly. One is it leverages everything you know and love about alpha, meaning that all of that equity, all that value that you've built up in alpha will be useful in this next generation architecture. But what we are going to do is unlock an enormous amount of value. And what we want to kind of do is give you a little heads up on where it's going so you can start to prepare for that. So first and foremost, Alpha Anywhere is our premier product. It is really about developing web and mobile applications, whether they're web-based or on mobile devices. It allows you to easily connect to back-end data sources and also generate business logic through either Node.js or XBasic or any number of different ways you want to do it there. Now, where we're seeing it going is, first and foremost, we now have the Alpha Transform product, which will be a sister product, meaning that it's actually built on Alpha Anywhere. So we're eating our own dog food, is an old saying, to generate this. And Alpha Transform is focused on developing very rich, powerful form solutions for mobile disconnected environments. So what would traditionally take days to do will now take minutes, and it will allow you to generate forms and send those forms out, get them filled out. They're very rich. They include photos, imagery, audio, complex parent-child relationships. So it stands alone, but what's really cool about it is that it is a sister product and a very tightly integrated product with Alpha Anywhere, meaning the following. First and foremost is that there are going to be pre-made connectors that are going to go from Alpha Transform to Alpha Anywhere. So a good example of that, and it's in our documentation, is you'll be able to take, actually, let me show you that real quick. Let me go in here. Bear with me. I just want to show you this real quick. Let me open recent. There we go. And I'll go to right here. So here's a great example. We're all used to building grids and specific lists by clicking SQL, connecting that. Well, guess what? When you're in there and you want to build a sort of a dashboard that goes against transform data, there will be a transform data type, which will allow you to connect. You give it the API key so that you have secure connection to it. You point to the form, and then it's automatically going to show you what fields are available. So therefore, all of that, I call it development equity that you have built up learning how to build lists and reports and other things like that, we're going to allow you to take advantage of that within the system. So you're going to use the same skill sets. And the cool thing about it is you get all the benefit of the very powerful front-end form building and collection of Alpha with the incredible power of Alpha Anywhere, and it's going to be reusing your existing skill sets there. Now, so that's step number one, which is super important, and that's in place and in development now, and we will be seeing that come out. And now, for first quarter, there we'll see the first integrations come into it. Now, the other part about it is that Alpha Transform has a very rich web API. So therefore, we have a full and extensive API, and let me expand this a little bit so it's a little bigger. How do I do that? Oh, I guess, well, anyway, kind of hard to see. Wait, view, zoom in. There we go, view, zoom in. Thank you, everybody. There we go. So the idea is you're going to be able to use a API. So if you, for whatever reason, weren't using Alpha Anywhere, you could easily connect to Alpha Transform through a web API and be able to do everything you need to do with that system. But what's nice also is that we can use that same API within Alpha Anywhere. So you can get deleting forms, creating new form instances, all these pieces. And you'll notice that we give in the documentation a curl command, which is what the industry uses to kind of teach people how to use it, like how is the structure of the call. So the neat thing is that it's going to be easy to connect into other parts of the systems. Now, part of that initiative is the following. When you built Alpha Anywhere, and this is a traditional, is you start out by connecting to databases, putting together grids, forms, etc. But over time, it's inevitable, and it's part of the process that you're going to start generating business logic, whether it's very simplistic business logic to do validations and verification data, to very sophisticated code that allows you to do algorithms and generation of pieces there. And traditionally, that was done in our scripting language, XBasic, which still works, along with Node.js. And what often we find is people will then kind of embed that in their grids and other pieces along those lines. Well, the cool thing about that business, and there's actually still some sound on mute, so you might want to double check mutes Dave.
Well, thanks.
No problem. And we're still getting used to this new system, so thank you, everybody, for your patience. So the idea behind that business logic is now with XBasic classes and XBasic modules, you can now start centralizing that business logic in a single place, and then in grids and forms and UXs, you can call that business logic. So one thing you kind of want to plan in the back of your head is that if you do have existing business logic, you want to start looking at how you can centralize that logic into either a XBasic, probably an XBasic class is really where we're going to go. And we did a class on that, speaking of XBasic class, we did a presentation on that. We're going to do another one very soon because it's a critical concept coming down the road. The nice thing about that is twofold. First is that instead of having your code kind of distributed through your grids and your UXs and stuff like that, any business logic is centralized in a central location. But there's another really cool thing. Part of the key release for this year and why we call it the Web API is that you're going to be able to easily create a Web API of yourselves that will allow you to securely present a user interface, a Web API to the outside world, so that external systems can contact through that Web API and access your Alpha Anywhere data and business logic. And one of the key functions is that we're going to be using XBasic classes as the basis for that Web API. So again, we're going to be doing this training. We're going to be bringing it along. You're going to get a lot of really good kind of foundational information as we go. But that's kind of the pieces there. So the cool thing about that is that now with this Web API, non-alpha third-party systems will be able to easily integrate with Alpha Anywhere. So let's say you go into an account and they already have a PHP system, but they want to have a whole bunch of cool capabilities that they don't have now, but they still need to use that system. Well, through the Web API, you can connect through PHP, VB, .NET, whatever it happens to be. But the cool thing about that is that it presents a lot of really neat capabilities in terms of encapsulating the sort of value of your system. So that's an important concept, is that if you think about it in Alpha Anywhere, you go ahead and you build value in terms of your user interface, how you present it to the user, how you structure and store that data, but also in this business logic. And to a large degree, once you put that together, it's a bit locked inside Alpha Anywhere, which is okay because that's probably where you spend most of your time. But what this allows you to do is now, in a scenario, is unlock all that value through a Web API to an external system. And what's really neat about that is that, especially for companies that want to take all that value and leverage it, that external system may be a customer system. So here's a great example. I have a client who's looking at moving this direction, and they basically are collecting and storing an information for clients. So they're a service. They go out and they help other large companies do a certain task. And I can't go into much details, but the idea is they've built a system that helps optimize their business. And out there, they're collecting a lot of data. They have a lot of algorithms that are built into it to figure out, what are priorities, what are important, et cetera, those pieces there. Now, what they want to be able to do is for their end clients, they can now write an API and wrap all that capability so their clients can take their end systems and connect them into it to grab the information and bring it back and forth and interface with it. Before, there would have to be a lot of, maybe you have to build special forms in Alpha Anywhere and do some other things, or maybe you write it to the database and read it out and do some sync logic. With APIs, it goes away with it. So they're very excited about that because they have an enormous amount of value. And now they can go to their customers and further unlock that value by giving the customers the ability to securely interface with the system. And most importantly, they create lock-in, because once these customers are getting their information from this environment, if another competitor comes down the road and says, hey, guess what, I can build you a system like that or this or that, they're going to have to not only build the functionality, but also integrate it with their systems through Web APIs. And over time, this is a connector that's going to become more and more solid with the end client. So there's some incredible business opportunities and business value in going the direction. So I want to kind of give you a feel of what we're going to be looking at. We're obviously this year going to be focusing on Transform. How do you use it? How do you integrate it with Alpha, both with the internal capabilities, but also maybe using the Web API functionality. We're going to be talking about how you centralize your business logic into a set of class libraries that are available for your existing app, which give you a huge amount of benefits for testing, maintainability, refactoring, etc. but also along with that is the ability to use that to generate web APIs that can unlock the value of your system. So there's a lot packed into 2018. I tell you, the team has been incredibly business. Our alpha development team, beyond just building Transform, which in and of itself is a monumental task, is putting together all these capabilities in the web API area, increasing the functionality of the XBasic classes and those capabilities. All of this groundwork has been laid for you, the developer. We can't wait to work with you to teach you and to help you unlock that value and add it to your existing capabilities and moving forward. So very, very, very exciting stuff. And there's lots of other improvements that are planned for this year, just general making things better, easier, faster, simpler to do things, making it easier to connect to other systems and other capabilities. Lots of very, very exciting things. So yeah, this year is really going to be about the web of the, I call it the, let me go back here. I call it the year of the API because that's central to a lot of what we're doing here, but there's so much more built into it, and we're very excited about working with everybody to help you gain an understanding of that and how to take advantage of it as it goes forward. And I think as you learn more and you see more, it's going to spark a lot of creativity and a lot of abilities to do just phenomenal things. So very, very excited about that. So with that, David, that was kind of just I wanted to do kind of a quick kind of overview of what's going to go on. We're going to be laying out a more formal kind of presentation and training plan for the year to help you get on top of all these capabilities so you are ready to rock and roll. And with that, I'll turn it back to David and see if we have any questions that we can go through on those pieces.
Sounds good. There are, in fact, no questions, not a single question.
Now, either I'm gonna blame that on the system, not on our wonderful, fabulous developers.
Could be, yeah.
Yes.
So listen,
don't make me come through this microphone.
7. There are dozens, in fact, I'm going to say actually scores of people here.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate everybody joining us.
I know they could hear us before because I said, hey, can you hear me? And they said, yes, I can hear you.
Oh, well, yeah, it's like you're behind the stage saying draw it out, but please take the time to put your questions in there. But I do want to talk about something that's very, very cool.
Okay, great.
And this just came out, and we're not even ready to demo it. There's a video on it that's really cool. So let me go in here, go to news and updates. Okay, let's go to help. Let's go what's new in this release. So I'll go here. Okay, so very, very cool is the ability. That's the old one. I'm trying to think where it is. Where's the new one? It's sorry, I'm going here. Okay, I'm going to the pre-release. Wait. I want to go here real quick and there we go. Okay. So there is something coming that is just, I can't wait to do a full demo, and I apologize, we just haven't had time to put the pieces together. It's in the pre-release, but there's something new called
instant update. Is that what you're talking about?
This is so cool.
Yeah,
this
I like this.
Is transformational, you know. Okay, so we've talked about it before, is that when you build, and let me jump back, I'm kind of jumping around, so bear with me, everybody. When you build, we're online, go down to, we have, let's see, let's go down here to, okay. So we talked about a concept, and we went through this, where when you build an alpha application for a mobile device, specifically, you go through PhoneGap. Basically what you're doing is it's almost kind of quote-unquote a compilation kind of process, meaning that it takes all the alpha content, it then wraps it in the PhoneGap shell, which then allows it to be installed on a mobile device, either iOS or Android, and that has the ability to connect to the hardware and device to be able to interface with it. And very, very powerful. It's really cool. It allows you to do, so basically you could build a PhoneGap application that then allows you to work with it. Now, one of the things about that is that if you needed to change that application, you hit a little less flexibility. If you're going to like a web app, all you have to do is publish it to the server and call it a day. I mean, it's like boom, boom, all you're done. So we introduced something called Alpha Launch. And this is kind of a little bit of history lesson. And I apologize if you already know these pieces, but it's kind of where we're going from there. And Alpha Launch was a shell app that allowed you to basically publish to an app and then download it. But the problem with Alpha Launch is that, it's alpha branded. It's not, doesn't look, the outside of it is alpha. And often the feedback we got a lot was that, well, I want it to be my app and I want to have the simplicity of Alpha Launch, meaning the ability to, instead of having to rebuild PhoneGap every time, I want to have the ability to put a new version on the server and have it run within my app. And so that was a real key challenge, and we heard that over and over with our team. And basically what happened was the developers went back to not the drawing board, but back into the labs, and they came out with something very powerful called Instant Update. And it is in pre-release, but this is so cool. What you do is basically you build your app in PhoneGap, you enable a new function called Instant Update. And what that does is now you can, so the process is this. So you build it, you enable Instant Update, you go through the PhoneGap build process, and then the person downloads it and installs it on their phone or their mobile device. Excuse me. So then what happens is this. When you do this, you're specifying kind of a location for your file. So it's a lot like Alpha Launch, wherein you send things, basically it wraps all of our pieces together and puts it on a server. And we're going to actually offer you two options. Alpha will help you do this, or you can have your own private S3 bucket. But the cool thing about that is that once you have done that, then when the app launches, it takes a moment to go check that location. And if there's an update, it will give the person the opportunity to update their PhoneGap app on the fly. This is so cool. So here's the scenario. I start out, I've got version 1.0 of my app. It looks great. I go through the PhoneGap build process. I enable Instant Update, and I have everything great. So the person downloads from the app, puts it on their phone. Everything's fabulous. Then I say, you know what? I've got version 1.01. It's got some new features, a couple of bug fixes, and things like that. Now, originally, you'd have to go to PhoneGap, rebuild it, send it out, and then the people would have to download that update on their local device or on their mobile device and then relaunch it, and you're good to go, which worked fine, but, it's a little bit more of a hassle. With Instant Update, what will happen is now I will say, okay, I'm publishing an update to my app. So instead of going through PhoneGap, basically it will wrap everything up that makes that app and send it to a server. In this case, again, we're going to help out by having an Amazon S3 bucket that you'll be able to use for us, or your own. So if there's security issues, etc., you'll be able to do it. Then what happens is that when you launch your app on the phone, it's going to do it, and you're online, it's going to make a quick call to that server location, say, hey, is there a new version? Yes, there is, and give the person the option of updating on the fly their app on the mobile device. So now I can literally, and that's a full app update. It's great. Any changes you make, it's that new version of the app. And they'll have rollbacks and other capabilities, so you can say, oh, I didn't really want to do that. I want to republish this previous one and put it up there. So some really cool functions that are built into it. So the beauty of this is that it's build once and you're done with PhoneGap. And that's very important, especially if you have to take a PhoneGap app and go through the app stores, because there's a process. It takes time and everything else. Now you can basically sort of enhance your app on the fly without having to go through that whole process. So this is really a culmination of all the work that we did last year on Alpha Launch and other things. We're kind of integrating it into the sort of the DNA of our applications, and it's hugely powerful because now updating your app is as simple as saying republish, put in a new version, put it up on the server, and we take care of the rest for you, and it will come down, and the app itself will refresh and do it. And that's in pre-release now. There's some cool videos on it that will be posted very soon. It's just a little bit of background on there right now. We want to kind of do a little bit more work, but just want to give you that's coming. We're going to do a more full demo where we're actually going to go through the whole process for you in one of our webinars very soon. But this is so cool. But it addresses so many issues we've seen over the last year in terms of people wanting the beautiful capabilities of Alpha to do rapid development, but they also want rapid updates and deployment, and that's where we're really going to in a big way. And this is so cool. I mean, this is transformational for our team. Anybody doing PhoneGap kind of work this year, they're going to jump on because it's going to make so simple. I mean, here's an example too, which is really cool. Let's say you find a new version, you can roll back to a previous version. So when the user launches the app, it's going to automatically re-download the old version. So let's say never happens, never ever happens, but let's say you do a release and you're like, well, I guess I shouldn't have really done that. You know, when you're on on a website or web, you just say redeploy and you're done. But in a PhoneGap app, you know, that could be a big hassle, time, you know, all that. You just want to say, hey, republish it, and then it will roll it back to that previous version without any more work on your part. The mobile devices will do it. So we're very, very excited about Instant Update. That's in the pre-release, and we'll have a lot more of that coming very soon. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. And again, for anybody who's doing PhoneGap work, it's just phenomenal, really, really phenomenal work. So check that out if you get a chance, and we're very excited about that. So we'll go back to Dave and...
So a couple of questions that have...
Oh, good. Excellent.
One just sort of procedural one that someone didn't have audio at the beginning, and they were wondering, are we recording this as usual? And yes, the recording should come out. We did test out that function before we started today. So it should be posted both to YouTube and to Vidler within the next couple of days. Excuse me?
Oh, I think we had a new version. Someone new joining us.
I think you're right. Let me.
Hey, note to self, everybody, and we're gonna optimize this. But when you do join,
we'll find a way. We'll find a way to mute everything. It seems to go unmute.
Don't be threatening to kill someone in the background because we may have to submit this under subpoena to a, you know. It's like Alexa. If you have Alexa in your house, it's the same thing. We're listening to everything.
In this case, it's like 50 live people listening to you. So
yes, exactly.
But we're muting people as they join. So we do have a lot of people here.
Yeah.
So someone had a question here about, because you had been talking about APIs, using APIs as a data source. And the question is, will Alpha be able to use APIs as a data source as easily as DAO connection strings?
That's a very good question, and the answer is in the middle, meaning the following. Let me go back to my presentation here. Okay, so when we talk about Alpha Transform, let me go here. When we're talking about Alpha Transform, it is going to be as easy as Alpha DAO. And the reason why is we completely understand that API, like to the integrate, because we built it. You know, it's all in-house and other pieces here. So anything involved with Transform, we are going to achieve the ability where it's going to be as easy as connecting and integrating with a database, i.e. Alpha DAO. Now, with the Web API to the external systems, the answer is partial, and here's the reason why. You know, when you're working with a database, the language is SQL, and that's standardized across all databases, is that I know how to make SQL calls and, you know, what's an insert and update, what's a primary key. That there's just sort of a structure around it that we can rely on that makes it easy to create the user interfaces on top of these kind of forms. And again, we kind of achieve the same thing because we understand that there. The problem with the Web API is that everybody is a little bit different. So therefore, and you really aren't using SQL to read and write data from the Web API. You're really passing JSON. You could do XML, but it's really going to be JSON back and forth. So the way I'm going to say it is we will get there. That is the goal. The goal of Alpha is to be able to allow you to use Web APIs as easily as DBs, because you know, Web APIs, you know, it's usually a coding kind of exercise and pieces there. And the heart of that is going to be through these classes. And so there's some things we're working on right now to make it easy. Like one thing we're thinking about is maybe there's a little bit of layer that's in here that you're responsible for putting together that turns the Web API into something. But there's a lot of things we're working towards that. So the first step is to make it very easy for you to build a Web API to take data out of Alpha and then provide it to external systems and respond to those systems. So that system says, "Give me a customer with ID 5." You can have an API that does that. But we are working heavily on improving our consumption of Web APIs to make them more normal. One of the things we talked about is that we could possibly, and this is just in theory, we could take a different application or like a UX or a grid, and basically say, instead of pointing it to a DB, point it to an XBasic class, which then either talks to the database or API. So there's a lot of research on that. So I'd say not out of the gate, but we are moving that direction to make it so you can just say, okay, I want to connect this list control to a web API, and then the only trick is you may have to set some parameters to tell it, well, what does the data look like come back? There's just a nuance of how that database is structured, or how that API is structured, and every API out there is done a little bit differently. Now, there is something very cool, and I highly suggest that you work, or you take some time, and I mentioned this on my there, but let me go ahead and go over here. Let me go back in here, bear with me. Okay, and this is an important thing to do some research and pieces there. Okay, there's something called Open API specification, called OAS. And the idea about this is that this is the way that they're working towards to make APIs sort of standardized. So what's cool about this, and you can check this out at swagger.io. Swagger is a company, I think it's Smart Bear Technologies, who came up with a way to create nice documentation for APIs. Basically, how, a formal way in which you can say, here's an API, this is what it does, this is how you would read and write from it, and this is what it, so but what they really did, which was very cool, is that they released it to the industry as what's called the Open API specification. So therefore, anybody can work against this one specification. And it's really cool, and there's a lot, if you come in here, there's a lot of training and other things that's available for you to check that out. Now, where that's going to is following. Before, you would say, I'm going to connect to this web API, and you'd have to look up with that company and figure out what it did and do all these other things. Now there's going to be, for every API that's developed, if people follow this process, there's going to be a specification document that is normalized, meaning it's the same structure for every web API. And what's really cool about that, and it already is available, is that you'll be able to automatically read that structure and create the code to be able to use that web API. So that's going to be the heart of our ability to auto-generate code to talk to this API, so you as a person. So where I kind of anticipate it going, and this is just supposition on my part, is that what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to use that open specification and then generate the connector module that then will allow you to connect it to a list or a grid or other pieces like that. The question becomes, are you standardizing on insert and updates and other things? So there might be some elements there. The problem is it's all kind of in the beginning stages, so we're not there yet. But again, the open specification is the heart of it, and it's really cool. It's very powerful. And the neat thing about it is that the other thing this does, which is super cool, is that, here's an example. Let me go back here, and I keep jumping around, and I hope this is not annoying to people, so bear with me. So first and foremost, it gives you a way to formalize this API to tell other people what this API does. So it says, here's an API. Let's say you have an API that allows you to read customer data in a database inside your system. So that API will say, this is how you read it, this is how you query it, this is how you update it, here's how you insert a customer. And so that's what in that documentation tells you how to do all those things. So first and foremost, now you can have a way to communicate to other people saying, hey, if you want to call and get my customer data, here's my specification, and it will be sort of the same. It looks the same as others, so it'll be very simple for them to grab that and then write their interface to your web API. But here's another thing that's really powerful about it, which is really the industry is very excited about it. Let's say you're starting to design this and you have a new feature in here. Let's say I'm storing products, and I want to add some, I'm going to store and maintain product information inside Alpha Anywhere, and I want to have a web API that will allow other people to call in and say, hey, what's your product availability, or I want to insert a product, or I want to do something through this web API. Well, the cool thing about this, and this is really where the industry is going, is you will sit down and you will put together this document before you write one piece of code. So you'll define your API. You'll say, okay, here are my calls. My API will provide you the ability to search for a product, for inserting a product. I won't let you delete a product, but I'll allow you to request a product. I'll allow you to do all these things here. So we'll come down and we'll sit down and we'll define that. And in that, we'll also define like, okay, when you search for a product, you have to give me a SKU. So what you're doing is you're creating essentially a contract between you and the other person saying, this is how my API will work. So even before I write a line of code, I know what this API is going to do. Then that allows me to start working on the code to actually generate the product and interface it with my database tables and create the search logic and do all those other things. Meanwhile, at the same time, the external person can be working with that contract and starting to develop their system. So traditionally what would happen is in previous times, I would have to go into this product area here and start building it and get it to a prototype level, and then I release that prototype, and then that allows this team to start actually running some tests and other things like that and start building their code. Well, I can dramatically accelerate things because I can come up with that contract first. I can be building this and that. And one of the cool things about that contract is that built into it is the concept of mock data. And this is really cool, and mock APIs. So what you can actually do, which is really fun, is that let's say I have that API, and again, we're going to go into more details, but let's say I have that API and I have a function called search product. So you give it a SKU, and then that would go through all my internal stuff and bring back a set of fields saying quantity, description, availability, or these 5 or 6 pieces of data there. Well, in this capability, and that's where companies like Swagger come in, is that once I've created that contract, I can also create a mock data for it. So I can say, here are 3 SKUs you can send me, and here is the data that would come back. And then this team here can actually write their code and run it against this mock API to then test their code even before I've done anything else. So again, there's this huge accelerant factor is involved with Web API that allow you to come up with a contract so everybody knows what it's going to do that first, and then everybody can go off on each side and be working on their pieces there, but also have the ability within here to create what are called mock interfaces, which allow the people who are building this portion to be able to call that API and simulate calling my system. So they can be doing that before I've ever even written a line of code, so they get everything ready and off to the races from there. So we're going to be doing some demonstrations and showing how this works and showing some other examples as we move into the year. But I'm so sorry, but that is kind of back to the original question is, will I be able to connect to an API just like I do Alpha DAO? I would say the answer is yes, not now, but in the future. And the heart of it is going to be, once you have this contract, we can auto-write code against this contract to be able to interface to it. So if someone gives you a contract, essentially what's called an open API specification, then we can generate all the connector code and everything else within Alpha, and then you'll be able to connect your list, your grid, et cetera, to those connector codes and be able to then exercise that data appropriately. There may be a little more coding to be done, Alpha, because SQL is so normal, but that's the vision, the future. And that's why it's so exciting, because we can, before, there was really no way for me to everybody had their APIs differently. I'd have to research each one, write some glue code, and do that other stuff. As this becomes normalized, as everybody uses the OAS to document their APIs, it allows us to create that automatic generation of code. So it's similar to when the SQL guys, when Date and Cod came up with SQL, they standardized, and that became an industry standard ANSI standard. And that's going to happen similarly with APIs. And once these standards come in place, then you can automate the integration of them together. So thank you so much for your patience as I gave you a 1-minute answer in 10 minutes, but that's kind of what's going on, and it's very exciting because it unlocks so much value. It allows you to unlock your value. You can create this contract, give it to other people. They can be building their connections without even talking to you almost. It could be a public version of that. You can post these in the public domain, so then you can say whenever, and then they just have to get the actual keys and whatever agreements you are to actually connect to the real one. So very neat stuff.
Yeah. Totally separate question. Someone asks whether or not we plan to have a storage connector to Google Cloud Storage like we do for S3 and for Azure connections. And the answer is, I know it's been talked about, but I don't know where it falls into the priority list. So if there's some particular reason why you think Google Cloud Storage would be a better solution for whatever app you're working on, better than S3 or Azure, by all means, send an email to guides, Guides, at alphasoftware.com and sort of make your case there. And we'll bring it up with the development team, and we'll chat about it and see if that should be the next connector or not. Next up, we had a question about, someone else still trying to figure out how to use the UX list to drag and reorder items. I don't know if you're able to do a demo on this today or if we have to punt it for one more week, but we can.
I'm going to have to take that as a action item, and I
okay.
know that's a fairly recent capability. I haven't personally used that, but we can get a little quick sample to it. Basically inside, and let me go ahead and go into my development environment.
And I know Sarah is online today too, our documentation expert. If she can find documentation for reordering UX, clicking and dragging and reordering rows in a list.
Injectable.
And there's documentation for it. We could paste that to the chat window. Otherwise, we will get you the answer to it.
Let me see if I have a, here we go. If we got a list customers here. I believe that's under list properties. Okay. This right here. Okay, so let me go ahead and show this real quick. Let me go ahead and let's see if we can just make this simple.
We'll do it live.
Yeah, we're no net today, so the flying will lend us. Okay, so this is just a list here. I can click on those items here. So let's go ahead and go into list of customers, and I'm going to go to properties here, and I'm going to go to okay. So basically, I just enable the property there. So let's go ahead and give this a try. Okay. Oh, it's going to fix something. It's doing some more double checks. It's nice. Have enhancements. Okay. So this, I'm going to have to do it. But the idea behind it is now I click and hold on here, and then I can move them up and down. So I must mean, so why don't we do this instead of, we'll go in and we'll get that ready and be able to present that. So that's a great question. And by the way, feel free to send those kind of questions in to guides at Alpha Software ahead of time, and then that way we can hopefully be ready for these events just to speed things up for you.
Great. In the meantime, let me see if this chat was sent to everyone. It was. Drag reorder is in the list properties. Documentation is available here, and then Sarah has provided us a link. If you want to take a look in the chat window, you might have your answer right there.
Yeah. The thing I'm not seeing is, yeah, it's all correct. The only thing is I've got a scrollable list, so I wonder how it differentiates. Is it control hold or something like that? Wait, what did it say? Hold on, one little quick thing. I want to just check this out real quick. You've got me going. It's like I'm like a dog with a bone. Yeah.
You look for that. Let me get to this other question.
Okay, you got it.
Someone asked if there are any estimates on transform pricing, and in fact, yes, transform pricing is available and has been announced. You need to just send an email over to sales@alphasoftware.com. They will send you out to the pricing page for transform. It is billed on a per user per month basis, but there is a 1-year minimum, and I think there's a number of minimum users as well. So I think the minimum is 5 users for 1 year. I'm thinking that it's in the $20 or $25 per person per month range. I might be wrong though. Just again, an email to sales@alphasoftware.com will get you an exact answer on that. And Dion, any luck on your?
No. Okay. No. I have to come back to it.
That's right. Here's a good question. It's something that I've seen not with PDFs, but I have seen it with JPEGs, and it has to do with the browser caching stuff. So this person writes in and says, look, I've got an S3 location where he keeps PDF files that are uploaded and downloaded to the application. And if you put in, he said, but the problem is that often browser tends to cache the old version of the PDF. So I put up something called My PDF, and then I made some changes to it, and I re-upload another My PDF, but with some changes in it. The next time I go, I still see the old version. I don't see the new and updated version. So he said, I know what to do. What I'm going to do is trick the browser into thinking that it's new by putting a parameter after it. So instead of just being HTTPS my Amazon address slash the file.pdf, it will be HTTPS slash the file.pdf question mark, and then in this case, he puts a date timestamp, but you could also use just any other random number or a GUID. So in other words, by making the URL just a little bit different, the browser doesn't think it's the same file and it downloads it again. The question in this case is there a better way or a better alpha way of doing this? And the answer is this. You pretty much have done it the alpha way, as far as I know. I think he actually got it
I'm
right.
Like, hey, I wish I had described it that way. That was very well done.
You actually got it right. Yeah, we tend to use a GUID, which are unique, instead of putting date and time. But I can't see why date and time wouldn't work, because the next time you time will have changed, and the parameter would have changed as well, which is great. So the click and reorder rows thing, besides the documentation that Sarah has posted, it does point out that the doc includes a component you can download, so you can actually test it out for yourself. So go to the documentation that Sarah pasted there in the chat window, and grab the component, and you should be all set. One more question. Bill has been asking, is there any update as to when we'll be able to search the video library again? And we had hoped to get that done by New Year's, and now here it is, January 3rd, and it's not done, but it is super close to done. Been working with Sarah on this. The application is actually written. We're just securing some server space right now, and it's just really a matter of us publishing, so I really hope it'll be within the week or so that we will have a brand new shiny Alpha Anywhere video library powered by Alpha Anywhere that you could search through the videos, including videos like today's webinar. So that's Sarah. Oh, Sarah's also saying, hopefully it'll be out soon. Hey, it should be out soon. We've been working on this for quite a while. It's been a big project. Let me see if there are any other questions here. Oh, here's one. I think we may have time for that. Can you discuss what the recalculate controls or recalculate UX actually does? Like, what's the point of that function in a UX?
There you go. I had mute on. That's an excellent question. What the individual's discussing is when you're using, say, in this case, a UX, under menu, you have something that says recalculate all controls or selected controls. What's going on is that this is a visual representation of your component. If you click over here, you're going to see that behind the scenes is XBasic, which is the true representation of this component. So you'll notice in here that there's all this code that basically defines what your components look like, how they're laid out, etc. So when you're actually working on here and you make modifications here, behind the scenes, it's automatically updating this XBasic to you. And so we've seen sometimes where for whatever reason, this will get out of sync. So if you go in and you go to Menu, Recalculate All Controls, what it basically does is take all this information and regenerates this XBasic. So that's all it's really doing, is regenerating. And this XBasic is actually what the server is actually using to generate your user interface and all the HTML, CSS, JavaScript that is needed here. So you'll see, for instance, this is talking about, here's, a container begin and the last button, and, here's a whole bunch. So this is a very complicated set. Highly recommend you never touch this. You're welcome to look at it, but I wouldn't touch it because it might break something. But again, whenever you want to, you can just go to Menu, Recalculate All Controls, and it'll regenerate that XBasic. And I've just had situations where something goes a little off, but I haven't seen that in a long time. It's less of an issue. And I think it's because
I was about to say I've never really had to mess around in that XBasic tab, at least not recently. So
no.
But it is there.
Yeah.
We try not to hide stuff from you, and this is one of those examples. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
It goes through there. And remember also, just to FYI, this is the XBasic, but when it actually saves it on the disk, and go right here real quick. Okay, let me go to a grid here, or let's go to a UX here. Component. There we go. Okay, and you'll see that we actually store this as JSON now, which is kind of cool. So before it was a binary file, which you would open up and it'd just be gobbledygook, but you can actually literally open up a component from the hard drive, and you'll see that it's basically done a JSON representation of this. And this is where you could do like a compare against another one to kind of see what's changed, what areas are changed. You could do a diff from that standpoint. So again, when you store so in here we have our editor, which you're going to work things visually here, but when it's saved to the hard drive, it's actually saved as JSON. because that works much better with source control and also down the road more things like comparing one version to another and kind of scenarios. So very powerful, very cool to look at. As you can see, this is the JavaScript library that this requires to have and to make XYZ work and things like that. But you can literally go through this and see, here's a layout directive button. This is how it's displayed. Here's the button text, map this customer. So let's go in here, I've got like a map this. Well, that's actually a different one. I think it's probably one of the other. But, you can see this is, if you just go through, this is how it's defined. It's the button ID and the label class and some of the theme data, etc. Everything you would set through the user interface over here is basically in that JSON file. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, very cool. That's it. We actually have one last question. I don't know, might be two. I don't know if you know the answer to it. This looks like a publishing error when publishing to IIS. An error message appears which says type SHA 512 managed could not be created. Have you run into that before?
No, I did see recently there was an issue where some of the JavaScript libraries weren't properly being displayed, but they've corrected that, and that's in the latest release. Mm-hmm. But no, go ahead and send. That sounds like a bug we would want to get into our team to look at.
It does, yes. So
yeah, that's, normally it's like can't connect to management service or right. Port not open. Often publishing on IIS is almost always like I'm trying to talk to the IIS box and I can't get to it. But if something like that, let us know because we definitely want to look into that.
Do that into bugs. And for people who are new, can you show people how to report bugs, where to do that?
Yes, absolutely.
Not
go
that we have
into
bugs,
the alpha development environment. So it's very important. You go to the help and send a bug report, okay? And you'll see it's going to give me a warning because I'm back a little bit on there saying, by the way, try out the latest because we do fix a lot of things on an ongoing basis. If you want to go ahead and do so, then what you can do here is basically it shows you, it gives you the instructions for how to do that and some guidance on how to do that from that standpoint. And then you can say use browser-based, and what it will do is it will create a, basically this is the structure we like to see. It tells us what versions you're in, what add-ins, and what you're running on, and all those other pieces here. There's also something in here called send an enhancement request, which again, allows you to then send in a request for a feature or capability that we don't already have. And again, that goes into our automatic tracking systems. Both of those do there. So again, help, send a bug report, or send an enhancement request, and both of those will be able to get it to us in a format that will allow us to help you out very, very soon, very quickly.
Great.
And by the way, right here, view pre-release notes. I could have just gone right there instead of searching around.
There you go.
There you go.
We have a person here who has a list control, and they're using a custom data source. So it's a function that runs a SQL stored procedure, and all the data is being returned as expected, which is great, but they can't get the list control to paginate the data.
Okay.
Is this a known issue? Are they doing something wrong? Can you talk about data pagination also for people who are unfamiliar with
so if I go into my list control here, what it allows me to do is paginate my data, which improves performance right here. So on my first one, you have SQL and you have paginate data. And the idea is that it's going to display a certain amount of data, and then when you scroll down, etc., it will then make subsequent calls to grab more data. So let's go ahead and look at here. Let's say page size is 5. Okay, so I just changed that there. If I go into my working preview, you'll notice that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now it's saying more records, and now it's bringing down those. And this is very valuable if you have like 500,000 records or something like that in your system. It really speeds things up. And notice I'm having to click a button to show more records, but there are options in here that will allow you to do, for instance, fetch more, or I can do auto fetch more, or navigation button. So there's changes here. My question is, I haven't used it with a custom data source, and it may be that there's not a mechanism for paginate, but where it has to recall that custom data source for a smaller set. So that's something we'd have to ask our development team on that. I haven't used it personally with custom, so we'll look into that. If you don't mind sending a quick reminder email, the guys at Alpha Software will reply back as soon as we find that information out.
We will, and also it looks like from Sarah that her information is that you have to write your own pagination handling for that.
Gotcha. That makes it makes a lot of sense because
and an example of that actually is pending integration into the documentation. Oh, okay, so someone else has run into this. We haven't built that in as a feature, but we have created some example handling code, and we're about to add that to the documentation.
Okay, great. Well,
so
excellent.
There's the answer there. Great. Oh, wonderful. All right. Well, thank you.
Because with SQL, you just go, select star from there, limit X to X or X to Y, and it gives you that a set of records.
Right.
So it's kind of, again, that's where, again, the difference between SQL is it's so normalized we can kind of predict what you need to do and handle it. Yeah. With custom, because you don't know what it is on the back end, it's the responsibility of the person writing the code to do more. And again, when we get to web APIs, we're going to be allowing you a lot of ability to quickly connect in your own web APIs. That's kind of where we're going there. But that open spec is going to go a long way because, over time, these open specs, they'll have further standards. So you'll have the open spec itself, but then you're saying, okay, for an open spec for data sources, here are the API calls that they should adhere to. Select, delete, update. So you can essentially turn a web API into a SQL query kind of concept, and that's kind of where the industry is going. So then it's child's play for me to auto-generate a connection because I know, oh, give me the open specification, and oh, my insert goes to my insert, my update goes to my update, my delete goes to my delete, and boom, boom, I can write most of that for you. That's where it's going from there. Yeah, cool stuff.
Great. A quick, somewhat technical question. Do you know if Node.js files and scripts can be included in XBasic classes, or if those classes are just XBasic?
I have not seen that. Now, within XBasic classes, you can include code that calls Node.js and works with it. So you technically can't include the code, but you can include calls to those Node.js classes. So you could, and the idea there is you may have a Node.js, you may want to wrap that in an XBasic class that makes it then easy to script in XBasic versus having to learn how to instantiate and do the stuff within Node. But you can't technically put the code in because it's JavaScript versus XBasic, but you can put in the connectors, the calls to the Node libraries. That's my understanding.
Nice. So and in the Web Projects control panel, do we have a section for Node.js modules?
Yep, right
we
there.
Do. So I guess
and also Node services.
Yeah, it's probably how they want them to be organized then, and not in the classes.
So as you can see, it's just JavaScript is how it's written there. Yeah. So this is an example of what's called a Node service, and modules are like function modules. It's sort of like our XBasic modules where you can have a 7. Services are a little bit different animal, and the idea here is that basically you give it some information, you get a response, and what to do once you get the response kind of thing. And there's some sample code in here that shows you how to put these pieces here. So if you're going to dive into Node stuff, you kind of have to brush up on your JavaScript skills. But the beauty of Node is that, and don't discount it because there are an incredible number of very talented programmers out there that know Node.js because JavaScript is probably the most widely used language in the world, and just because everybody who does websites does some element of JavaScript in a little bit. And you'll find them on Upwork and Fiverr and places like that. So, and the other cool thing about Node that's very powerful is there's a whole bunch of Node modules that have been pre-made for Dropbox and all these third-party pieces. Now, that said, when the world goes towards web APIs, we're going to make it easy for you just instead of having to go through Node, you can get that OAS and then just write your own little XBasic functions to exercise those web APIs. So therefore, it'll become even simpler kind of for you to do it within the XBasic domain. So kind of where we're going from there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I'm calling right there.
Great. Well, we have reached the end of the hour, and no giant technical glitches so far with WebEx. So it looks like a good start here. We'll have another webinar next Wednesday. We'll send you out information. It's likely to be a little bit different, so do take a look at the email to see if the link has changed or something like that. But in the meantime, if you have questions, please send them over to guides, guides, at alphasoftware.com. And I want to thank also Dion and Sarah. Sarah was behind the scenes, and Dion was up front presenting, helping to put together today's presentation. Hope to see you all next week. Take care. Have a great week. Bye-bye.